Yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome to Free Lady Co Podcast. I'm your host, Brittney McWethy. I have an amazing guest today. His name is Quinn. So excited to have you, man.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate your time.
Yes, I appreciate yours as well. And again, guess where I met him, you guys? In the Lion's Den. And can I just say, I just want to say something real quick because I noticed this on your profile that you're a Steelers fan.
I am.
Me too. I've been a Steelers fan for almost 30 years. My best friend's dad is from Pittsburgh. And so it's been Steelers Nation at their house every time it's football season. So that is really,
Yeah, and I'm
really
from Northern
cool.
California too, so being a Steelers fan has been pretty challenging feat to say the least. You know, you're supposed to, be loyal to some of your local teams, and ever since I was a little kid watching the Steelers growing up, they've always just been a tough team, and I just kind of gravitated towards that team.
Yeah, exactly. I just love it. I just love what they're all about. They're very much about their fans and their community. And like, I just love that. I love that. Love
Yeah.
that. So I'm from California too. So we were growing up with having the Raiders and everything like that. But there are Steelers bars like everywhere, like if you look for them, which is kind of cool.
They're out there. We have a couple in Sacramento.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, you're in Sacramento. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So, Aaron, tell everybody, who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Quinn. I'm a men's vulnerability coach. Help men get aligned with their vulnerability and authenticity inside their marriages, their parenting, and in their businesses. Been doing that here for about a few years now.
Wow.
So I've always been into personal development and business development, and over the years growing up, I've had to take on so much that I felt that I've had to take accountability, personal accountability throughout my whole life. And as I've gone through my journey the last 10, 15 years, I went through a divorce and then got remarried, and then the pandemic, I really gravitated towards vulnerability a lot more because I had to break through the ego and I had to get real with myself. And I had to take action steps that were in alignment with what I really wanted out of life. And since I started doing that, everything just started escalating and accelerating at a 10x speed.
It's funny how that happens, right?
Yeah.
It's the things that people don't want to do, like work through all that hard stuff to get to where you are now. And so, what inspired you to become the leader that you are to help men and to create this group? Like, what's your background in that?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. I just really started seeing people, men specifically. I started observing more guardedness and how just men just aren't expressing themselves the way they need to or the way they should. They tend to live externally and hide from their true shadow. And
Right.
I myself, going through my shadow work, I found that everything lies on the other side of doing your shadow work. Like it's one of the most hardest things to do, but looking inwardly and finding who you truly are through those experiences that you've gone through really helps shape that vulnerability and helps you get authentic and live life in true alignment and just making sure that you're being true to yourself.
Yeah, living a life of freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotional and spiritual freedom for sure.
Absolutely. I love that. I talk about this a lot, especially this last year and do you agree with me, with the times that are happening now, that men don't even feel like they have someone to talk to. They are so ashamed for their masculinity that it's even harder for them to say, hey, I need help, or they're like embarrassed for their masculinity, like it's being taken away from them. Therefore, their voice is also being taken away. So have you seen that in
Oh yeah, for sure.
group? And what
Yes.
have you done about that?
What I've seen is I've just seen men being afraid of expressing who they are, and in fear of that other men will think that they're weak, or they don't have true strength. But the circle that I have, a lot of my friends that I circulate myself around, we're all vulnerable. We all hug each other. We all say we love each other. We all have families, and it's a different caliber of men, so to speak. And once I started seeing the difference between that, I knew that other men wanted to feel this way and wanted to be this way. So that's why I started gravitating towards being a men's vulnerability coach. You know, helping other people reach that true vulnerability aspect in their hearts, and just becoming burden free from all of their past traumas.
Wow. That is so beautiful. Like, it's just, that's so touching because that is what the true experience of life is being free, being able to have that one person that might just only be you. That's enough. That's enough to know and teach that they are enough. And that is such
Right.
a beautiful gift that you have. So let's talk about that. Like, did you always know from a child that you wanted to like help people, or was it your experience that you grew up in, you know, a traumatic relationship with your father or your mother, anything like that, that kind of put you in a place of being stuck in your life or not being able to move forward, recognizing that, and then how you move forward to become
Yeah.
the man
I
that you are?
Yeah, so I grew up pretty poor, single mother household. She was disabled, schizophrenic.
Wow.
My father was in and out of the picture. I saw him every other weekend, and it just wasn't a good fit for a child to develop, I guess, typically. So I've
Right.
always been on survival mode for a large part of my young childhood and early adulthood years. I put myself through college and struggled through there, but I graduated. So that's one of the biggest celebrations for my own self to be grateful for.
Mhm.
But as I've been growing up, I've always felt that I was aware of radical self-reliance and accountability because I had no one to turn
Mhm.
to. I had no one to lean on. Even though I had family, I still had to be mentally strong for my mom. I had to, you know,
Right.
help her pay the bills. I had to like be an adult as a
Right.
like a 10-year-old. So I've always
Wow.
had that mental fortitude to get me through that. And as I progressed through early adulthood, I realized that a lot of people struggle with just taking accountability and doing these things. And I've always had a really strong connection with being vulnerable with people. I can get vulnerable with people really quick, really fast, and really start peeling the onion back and disarming any type of ego.
Mm. Mm.
I had a
That's
really
so
good
good.
time talking with people and connecting with them on in the heart space. And one of the things that at the pandemic start, you know, I started just realizing everyone's in fear and like all of this stuff happening. And, you know, I said, this is the perfect time to
Yeah.
hone in on these skills and this alignment for myself and really dive into helping men connect with not only themselves, but with their families and their businesses and help scale their business and just really help reconnect with themselves and their wives and families.
That's beautiful. And you must have that experience also with, you know, I don't want to say, I don't think anything is a failure, right? But you are have been divorced and remarried. And I feel like when you've been divorced, I mean, I haven't been divorced, so I can't really say 100%, but I also think of it as an experience, as a lesson, things that you learned and, you know, growing apart and that, you know, knowing that's okay. Did
Sure.
you, in that particular marriage, were you struggling to be who you are? And
Absolutely.
then you did.
Yes,
So, okay.
absolutely. And you know, I'm not going to say anything negative about my ex-wife, but
No,
I do acknowledge my shortfalls and
right,
where I wasn't the space for her, she wasn't the space for me, and just from the compatibility standpoint, it just didn't mesh right. Uh,
right.
so I realized the childhood traumas that I've had were
Mm,
surfacing
mhm.
in that relationship,
Okay.
and
Okay.
I was escaping that, and I wasn't hitting that shit head on. And once I
Right.
started realizing that, the more I started becoming more in alignment with myself, I realized that our paths were separate paths
Huh.
outside of us
Huh.
having the two children. So
Right.
what I started thinking to myself was like, hey, you know, I'm not going to listen to everybody saying, you know, stay married for the kids, stay married for the kids, because what's going to happen is I'm going to raise children, and my children are going to see their father sacrificing who he is to be with
Mm.
someone, and I don't want them to carry that on into
Woo.
their marriages and their families. So
Right.
as hard of a decision as that was,
Right.
making a stand for myself, it was the most rewarding, because right now I have the most fantastic relationship with my ex-wife, better than we've ever had married or even dating. And my
Wow.
children are flourishing. We're in a blended family. I'm happily married to my wife Stacy, and we're just our family is flourishing, and it's all by design. We both wanted it, and we both wanted to live a life of love and gratitude and compassion, and just really owning who we were. And in that moment in time when I made that decision to leave my first wife, it was the hardest thing,
Right,
like
right,
not tucking my children in for the first 6 months, like not
right.
knowing. I came back every night, tucking them in, and then leaving. But then after that, knowing that they knew I lived somewhere else, that was really hard and really mentally draining for me. But over time, it healed itself, and I just kept leading with love and compassion and gratitude. And I had to become a better version of myself to help lead my ex-wife in this process, because
Oh,
for her, obviously, it would be a wreck. You know what I mean?
right.
She didn't understand, she didn't know. But through that process, I had to learn to feel shield the bullets, and just take things onto the chin, and just be a better man, and just be there not only for my ex, but now for my wife, as we started dating, in that process as well. So it was a really challenging effort, but we're past that hump now, and we're now creating a life that is not textbook, so to speak, from all the other divorced stories.
Right? Well, that gave me chills, man, because that is like the ultimate experience with blended families. I'm about to embark in a blended family myself, with Daniel having his, three wonderful girls with, and his ex-wife. And that's my goal. Like, I'm not going to try to force any of that, but like you
Sure.
said, I want to point this out, you guys, that every day Aaron showed up with compassion and love every single day. Now, that might not have felt like he was doing a good job, right? When you started all
Yes.
these things and going through all these heartaches of, not being with your kids every day. I mean, Daniel talks about that all the time. But things are not going to happen overnight. And when you have the consistency of showing up for yourself, showing up with compassion and love, eventually you are going to show that to your children, to your ex, to your wife now, where you all want to show up for each other because there's no hard feelings there, because love is being put first. And I think that is such a beautiful thing and such a beautiful example. You're setting the example for every man and
Sure.
woman who are in a blended family.
Yep.
Like, this is all possible, and it's only because it comes from your choices. You get to choose to be in that relationship.
Yep.
And it also makes your children thrive, like what you were saying back then. If you were just hiding from who you were in a marriage that wasn't working, like, yes, you had some difficulty because of your past in there. But once you recognize that, and you're like, well, now I'm going this way because that's where Aaron lives,
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, like, I don't know how old your kids were when that split happened, but how they are achieving their goals because of what they've seen you achieve. I'm sure that is just so rewarding for you.
Oh, it really is. And my two children were about 3 and 7, 3 and 6 at the time. My
Yeah.
daughter was 3, and my son was 6 or 7 at the time. And now the relationship I have with my son is just outstanding.
Oh.
My daughter's still developing, and she's still coming into her own little person. She's 11 now, and my son's 13. He
Mhm.
works out with me. He's an
Oh, it's so
stud
cool.
athlete. He's a star student. He wants to start his own business this summer, detailing cars. So he's totally into business, and he's actually going to go with me to the Lions Den Live. So I bought him
Ah,
a
that's
ticket. Yeah,
awesome.
so we're really excited. So I struggled about a year and a half ago with my son, uh,
Hmm.
and I didn't really know that I was struggling with him. And one of my friends actually pulled me aside at a barbecue. He's like, "Hey, what's up with Jacob? Always moping around, and kind of just like, I didn't know if it was like a preteen type of slump or like some attitude, but he was definitely struggling inwardly.
Hmm.
And here my story is like, if they're struggling, it's because of the marriage or because of the divorce. Um, so I pulled him aside and I had a really heart to heart conversation with my boy. And from that moment, I mean, we cried, we laughed, and I just really got extremely vulnerable with him, something that I never did
Hmm.
ever. And
Wow.
that was one of my turning points as well. And ever since that moment in time, we've been inseparable. Like he's just
Oh,
he's completely embraced both homes, both just the lifestyle that we have. And it's just really beautiful to see him develop. And my daughter Chloe, she's coming out of her shell. She's into sports and cheer, and she's really starting to grow. And I'm gonna have that same type of conversation with her probably when she's around 12 years old. And for my two other boys, that Stacy Bird, I just had to lean into them as well and love them as
yeah.
my own, and
Yeah.
show them what it takes to be a stepfather and just to be an overall father for them, and still respect their dad,
Hmm.
still show
Yeah.
them love and still show their dad respect, and still not overstep my boundaries with him you
Right.
know so there's times where we had to have uh, a hard conversation. We had a death in the family a couple years
Hmm.
ago, and instead of talking to the children first, I called their dad and said, hey, this happened. Do you mind if I have this conversation XYZ
Oh,
about this death? And
yeah,
we had a little conversation about it, and then we ended up talking with the children, but still having those boundaries and
for
still
sure.
being inclusive with the exes is our top priority. We still envision to have Thanksgiving and Christmases all together. We know that the her ex-husband is already married. My ex-wife has a steady boyfriend, and he's involved with the kids. And you know we want to be inclusive. We want everything to be just together, and there's no
Yeah.
reason why we need to separate things, you know excuse me, at a point to where there's animosity or
Right.
separation or angst. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
you're
Yes.
teaching kids,
Yes.
you're teaching kids to get through the traumas, and take shit on the chin, and dust yourself off, and still show love and still
Right.
be grateful for where you are in life. So
Right.
that's our life motto, so to speak.
That, I mean, I just love that. I'm like getting chills with this whole entire conversation already because like that your vision is my vision currently, like your exes are, when you have children involved, your exes are going to be a part of your life forever. So your family is all you got. And even if you have the backstory of being married once before, or, she was married once before, you're still a part of each other's life. You're still raising these children together. You're showing them that it is okay, as long as you worked as hard as you could in that marriage. If it just didn't work out, like,
Right.
it's okay. And you have the ability to still be together and still sit at the same table.
Yeah.
And guess what?
It,
That's probably going to make a ripple effect with all their friends and their
totally.
friends,
It
like changing the dynamic of what we're programmed to just hate on our
right.
exes, which doesn't show anything but hatred to our children.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a big opportunity with the kids' friends, because when you make a decision like that, you impact your outer circle, right? And you impact
Right.
other families that have children that
Right.
are young, that don't really quite understand why are they not together, and why are we going over here? Why are they over there? You know what I mean? Why doesn't he live
Yeah.
here anymore? So the best way to get through that is to be open about everything and talk about everything in the home, so that
Right.
your children feel comfortable going back and forth between homes and talking about things. That was
Right.
a little bit of a struggle early on, but the more Stacy and I talked about the exes openly with love and gratitude,
Right.
the children eased up a bit. It took a while, but
Right.
that was our consistent effort of just talking about my ex or talking about her ex without hush hush, or without anger, or bad mouthing them. We still get our exes Father's Day and Mother's Day cards and presents and gifts on their birthdays and
Mhm.
Christmas, and we get it for the kids, for them. So we still show them love in a different capacity, but we have to show the kids that, you know, we're okay. And then after you start doing that, you continue doing that, but then when you start are being seen together, like sitting together at sporting events, that's something new
Right.
for us now. We're starting to do that now, and that wasn't there before,
Right.
but now it is. So that's the
Right.
next step, right? And it's
Right.
starting to collaborate on pickup and drop off and just coordinating things and seeing the parents being a family unit, you know, as
Yeah.
they're watching it growing up, they're seeing, like, I never saw any like anger or like shit talking
Right.
or, you know what I mean, or
Right.
separation. Like, so that's where we're aiming to get to. And it does take a lot. It takes, I mean, there's times, you know, you're upset and you're like, what the fuck is going on? And you know, why'd they say this or why'd they do that? But you have to get over yourself. You have to get over that ego and let,
Hmm.
you just
Hmm.
have to tell yourself that the children are watching. And
Right.
for the best thing you could do is just keep a level head and keep your head high and
Right.
show love in the face of anything that comes your way.
Yeah.
And it's gonna pay off. You might have to take a few jabs here and there, but it
Right.
it it pays off in the very end, and the kids will see it eventually. They may not see it when you want them to see it,
Right.
but as you continue
Right.
and you allow them to have their own breakthrough when they like, wait a minute, I was expecting this, but I didn't get this from this person. You know,
Right.
it allows them to shift their own perception because you're not going to change their mind. You're not going to force a child
No.
to feel one way about a parent or another, and you just have to embrace their process and allow them to develop into their own on their own time, and just be the same person you were, consistent, you know, every time, and then they're gonna come around.
Yeah, that's really well said because it really takes a lot of patience. And Daniel, I mean, he is so patient. I am just like, wow, but it helps me be patient because he's patient. Um,
Sure.
Especially, I'm not a mom, even though like I have four younger siblings. I have 14 nieces and nephews, not from them, but from my friends. And I just love kids. I love what they have to say. I love what they're inspired by. I love them when they're creative. I love just how they talk because they're so innocent at those stages in life. And it's such a beautiful thing. And like Daniel has really worked really hard on, giving that space for his ex, for her to be able to express herself within the family and the children and everything like that. And, like I'm sitting here like, okay, when are we going to meet? Like, when are we going to do family stuff? Like, I'm like, when, because
Yep.
like, I'm so eager. I want that to be in place. But, that's where I am learning patience. And if you guys out there listening to this are in the same boat as me, guess what? Like we can learn patience together and keep each other
Sure.
accountable, because that is the hardest part, is like, when is that going to happen? But just like, as you say, like just that consistency, that momentum, and taking action with love and throwing that ego aside, because, you know, of course, we're all going to have our opinions of when things go wrong. Well, like, why is that going to happen? But, when we ask ourselves why, like the truth that we might think, that truth might not even be truth anyways.
Right.
So that's, if you can just think of that and have that in your back pocket to know, like, well, I might not be right anyways, that will allow you to step back and just keep an open mind, I feel.
Yep. A lot of times we
No?
get stopped by our own thoughts, and like if we
Right.
think something, oh, it's because of that, and then we
Right.
don't want to do any critical thinking, and
Right.
like, wait a minute, like, maybe it's not, and a lot of times we get stopped by not wanting to have the conversation with someone,
Mm,
and we allow that decision that we've already made in our head to
right.
be the final verdict without reaching out to the person and having that conversation.
Right.
And one of the hardest things that Stacy and I had when we first blended was we underestimated the time it was going to take for all four children to acclimate and blend.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
Stacy and her two boys lived in 1,100 square foot house, and me and my two kids moved in, and then like 6 months later, the pandemic happened. So all six of us are in this 1,100 square foot house for a
Oh
couple
my
years, and just like at each other's necks and personal space. You got four kids, or three. The our fourth boy is older, so he was in his room, but we have three of the littles, around the kitchen table, all in different schools and all in different classes. You got one doing jumping
oh
jacks
my
in PE.
God.
I'm in the corner and doing a Zoom meeting, and she's in the bedroom doing her meeting, and
Yeah,
it was total chaos. And
right,
the pandemic is its own beast, for as far as emotional and mental capacities, but put that on top of blending, and it was a recipe for just chaos. And there was a lot of love, but it was very chaotic. So we eventually found a home, and we're 1 year into our new home, and we all have our personal space. And ever since that happened, everything started accelerating even that much more, because everyone had a chance to breathe. Everyone had a chance to cope and process. And,
right,
I look at it this way. We came into their home, right?
right,
There's three
right,
people coming into their home,
right.
and her youngest was, I think like 6 or 7,
Okay.
same age as Chloe. And, at the time when we moved in, he was probably 8 or 9, and all the years are jumbling together now. But you're a young kid, and he had to come in, and we had to share one room for three children, and the teenager
Oh,
got his own room. So there
okay,
was,
okay,
so there was
yeah,
a big shift, so to speak.
right,
So going back to what I was saying, we underestimated the level of time that the children needed to acclimate, and um, also just understanding what their coping was. They went through the
right,
pandemic too, and
right,
here they are blending living with new people, and they're sharing their space, sharing their toys. And it was a pretty good lesson for my wife and I. And once we got into the home, everything started leveling out. Everyone started getting into their own thing, and finding their true self. But going back to what you're saying, patience is definitely top of the list when it comes to blending a family, and just allowing the children the space to come to
right,
you. And all you got to do
right.
is just be consistent.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I kind of think that the pandemic was a blessing in disguise.
It really
Like
was for
you
us. It
had
was
to just get together, and you knew that everyone was going through whatever they were going through in a small space. And I'm sure they had even more gratitude and so much more to be thankful for, like having their own space now to go through what they went through, even if they didn't recognize it or not. That is
right.
something very powerful, to look at it that way with the pandemic, because I mean, you heard horror stories after horror stories with these kids at home, and just not being able to get educated correctly. And there's still uh some progress that is still, as parents, really trying to get their kids when they're still
Yep.
struggling from that.
Yep. I still feel there's
Oh,
rippling effects from that. My daughter, actually, I feel, is struggling a little bit academically right
mhm,
now because of it.
right.
And she went through four teachers in one of her school years. Four.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
having not only her splitting families, and then getting into a pandemic, and then having no consistency as for a teacher.
Right.
Like, I tell myself she's grasping for attention, and feeling abandoned in some aspects.
Right.
And that's something I'm working on right now, trying to figure out and solve with
Right.
that. But I feel like that experience has hindered her
Right.
level of scaling in naturally in the progression of her school.
Right. But at the same time, exactly how that felt, because you
Yeah,
had to take care of yourself because you didn't have consistency with your family. And so you get to
right,
use that and but you have to try to figure out, like, what is the recipe for my daughter? And,
right,
what do I need to do for her when, that, I mean, no one knew that it was going to disrupt our kids' minds, the pandemic. And that was like, I felt like the pandemic was the saddest for children,
yeah.
and especially if they did not have
Homecomings.
Yeah.
No homecomings, no graduations.
Yeah. Or even, being around the parents that really hated each other, but like, because they were at work being
Yep.
far apart. And I mean, hopefully this, had come to conclusions for all these other people and all these other kids that they have help now. I really hope so. That's what I pray for every day, is that they get some type of relief in what people are doing now to help those children in those situations. Because it was really scary, it was super, super scary. And like, I mean, just watching my friends going through that with their children, I was like, oh my gosh. Or like I had clients who were teachers and them struggling with their kids, because do you think they're gonna pay 100% attention? They don't even pay 100% attention when they're in class. It's like trying to get these kids' attention through a screen. I mean, and then talk about like social media and all these things that,
Yep.
has definitely, put our kids into a regular of being on the screen. And it's just, I mean, I'm going down a rabbit hole right now, but like I am, but it's important for us parents to know that is a true fact, not that like, oh, it was fine. Like, get our children out, giving them experiences and being around people and going into sports and finding that true thing that gives them joy and freedom to be who they are.
I
I
agree.
mean, yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. Like I I think I talked about this the other day of just, even when you're going into restaurants now, like I am not a fan of having the phone at the table. Like I'm just not. And these kids are not only looking at their phones with their family at the table, like
Everyone's on their phone.
their whole
Yeah,
body is like their heads are almost below the table because of, just
it's
that
over.
like it's crazy.
Yeah.
It's like the energy is like push their whole spine down like this, and like why are these parents allowing that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
You know?
I've been guilty of it at times, but
Sure, sure, we all have.
we're very aware of the phone usage. And at dinner time, we do one family meal a week because we do have the kids 50%.
Right.
So every 14 days we have the kids 7 days, and one days each week we have a family dinner with my wife's mom and dad, and they come and I cook. And a lot of times we play the gratitude game. Like everyone goes around in a circle, says what they're grateful for. We also have talking points cards that you pick a card
Oh,
out of it, and it's a prompt. So it says, what do you like best about growing up? Or they're separated between adults and children, and there's family and there's kids. And it allows the children and everybody around the table to open up, and
right.
we felt that doing that takes
Wow.
takes it not only takes away from them wanting to leave the table and also to get on their phone, but um, it shows them the importance of what family dinners are for. I didn't have that growing up, so it's
Mm.
really important
Yeah.
for me to show the kids that you have to have family dinners every single week. You have to be there.
Yes.
That is where everything is talked about. That is where
Yes.
you learn things. It all starts in the home. It all starts in the
Yeah.
home. And that one day a week is probably the most important to me because it allows us to sit with the kids and just to be with them. We play games, and sometimes I'll help with cooking and things of that nature. And when her parents come over, they play games with her parents, and we really try to develop an environment where we're just being together, we're present.
Yeah. I love that. That is one thing that I did get to grow up with is, having dinner with the table. And, I mean, I didn't even realize that was such a gem,
It
right? With
is.
all the technology now, like there wasn't technology. I mean, you did sit at the table, you know what I
Right.
mean? And but those were like the fondest memories that I have, because we were
Yeah.
laughing or playing games or making fun of the hot dogs and our macaroni because, we didn't
Yeah.
have a lot of money. You know what I'm saying? It's like But those are the times that it was just so wonderful because you literally sat there with belly laughs or talked about God knows what. And I still, really, really admire people who have family dinners. And that is definitely something I want to have because, first of all, when you're having conversation, when you have food, you're giving your body energy. So like you have energy to speak, it's like, don't ever get in a deep conversation if you're hungry. Like that's just not going to go good. So, and then having games. And I just love the idea of like having cards and like thinking outside of the box
Right.
to be united, you
And
know?
it's such a small idea, but like it has a pretty profound impact.
Right.
And I think over time the kids will like look back at it and say, "Oh, that was fun." You
Yeah.
know, "Oh, your parents don't do that. Well, you don't do that at home." You know,
Right.
it sparks conversations with their friends too. Like, "Oh, that's cool."
Yeah, I'm sure when your kids go over to sleepovers and they have like a family dinner, they'll probably just naturally ask questions, or naturally speak up. And then it's lessons for you and your parents of like,
Right.
getting to know like generations of family and how it was for them and how it is today. Just like that conversation will never stop. You can always learn
Right.
something new from that.
So
And
one of the greatest things too about Stacy's parents are that Stacy's parents were divorced when she was a young girl,
oh,
and
okay.
they're still friends, and they still show up for her. And
Really?
for them to come over to our home and as a blended family and be an example for an example for our kids to see that,
Wow.
that's really special for us because
Wow.
they sit with each other like nothing ever happened. They don't ever talk bad. They're friendly. They hug. They laugh. They're here every single holiday. Like I've been with her for a handful of years, and I've never seen any shit talking between them two. And they just always show up for their daughter, and I really admire that about them. And they show up for our kids. They show up for my children specifically. Loving them as their own. And I hope that my children see that. I hope that Stacy's children see that.
Yeah.
Hey, we can have uniformity amongst people that aren't blood and be a family. It's about a choice and who you're around and who loves you.
Yeah, and seeing that at a generational scale.
Yeah,
Have you ever asked her parents, like, you know, what they did and how they chose to be like that and have that friendship? Like, what was going through their minds
I
when
think
they
what
split up and
yeah,
made that choice?
I think they had the conversation, at the time of divorce that, no matter what, we're going to be there for Stacy. So I have heard stories along that line. I don't know the details of that, but I do recall hearing about that conversation. So I do know there was some foresight, at that
Yeah.
moment in time for them to stay together and just figure it out for her.
That would be a cool conversation to
Yeah.
have for you to have with them and maybe make it into like a single podcast or like just something that you share if they're willing to share that because that is a very unique thing that they have for that generation. I bet
Oh,
it would
that's awesome.
probably
Yeah.
blow your mind of like seeing what they have to share, and then how you share in your generation to, push this generation now that this is okay. This is a
Right.
normal thing when we were brought up that it's not normal, like especially for her parents, like that, it was not okay to get divorced back then. Like you were shamed for that. Like,
Oh,
so
yeah.
there's also that they probably had to go through as a couple. They probably were shamed for being friends. I mean, God, I mean, the list can go on. I think that would be a wonderful thing
Yeah,
for,
every time I went
you
to my
know,
dad's house, he would pick me up and he would park like down the street. I'd have to go out there and walk to his car. He would never come to the door, and
yeah,
that always felt really uncomfortable for me,
right. Right.
as a child, as you need your dad
Right.
and he didn't, to me, it didn't show the effort, you know what I mean? So that
Mhm.
inspires me to show the
Right.
effort and to be, inviting them in our home and
Right.
making sure that the kids know that it's okay. It's not your
Right.
fault because when
Right.
you keep it separate like that, the kids start feeling like it's their fault.
Yes.
And you have to
Well
show
said.
them that it's not. the adults do their own shit. It has
Right.
nothing to do with the kids. You
Right.
know, the kids are a
Right.
blessing, and they don't know that by seeing that type of,
Right.
you know, anger. And you know, when they're not getting answers, they're gonna inwardly think like, oh, it's my fault, or I did something wrong, and that's just not the
Absolutely.
case.
Absolutely. And then they're gonna grow up with like with everything that they do. Oh my
Stories.
God, like I did that. I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Like, you know, they're gonna get trampled over. I mean, I had that experience too. And that also goes to show that, you know, some people just are not ready. They're just not ready to be in that position, but that is always on them. It's something to do with how they love themselves and how they treat themselves. And that's again, nothing on you as long as you show up, you try. If you know, it doesn't
Yeah.
work for everybody. Are your parents still pretty distant now, or have
My
they
parents,
changed a
I don't
little
talk to my
bit?
dad, and my mom
Right.
passed away in 2012.
Mm, I'm so
Thank
sorry
you.
to hear that. It sucks losing a parent, man.
Yeah.
I lost my dad. It'll be 16 years this year, and you know, it's just like you think about how many years that is. Like when you really put it all together, and you know, watching your young, because I'm the oldest, right? Just watching your kids go through. I call them my kids.
Mhm. That's
Just
awesome.
watch, right? Just
That's
watching them
awesome.
go through all these things, and you're just like, damn it, you know, like I just wish dad was here
Yeah.
to, you know, help them with this or guide them through this, or, you know, what that experience might be. Um, but, you know, and all of them are just flourishing now. They're really,
Yeah.
I mean, it took them a really long time. It took me a really long time to flourish too. You know, one of my siblings is struggling super bad still with alcohol and all these things. I know he constantly tries. And, you know, that's the only thing that we have to pray for is that, like, because he's amazing, you know?
Mhm.
So, but it's just like, you know, you not talking to your dad, it's just those people just they don't have the ability to show up from themselves because they don't know how.
Yep.
And that goes back to like what we were talking about in the beginning of men, they of not being able to be raw, realistic, you know, and vulnerable with themselves because they don't know how, you know, they were programmed not to, and then they're programmed now to like masculinity is something to be shameful for, you know, it's
Right.
like, no, all humankind are beautiful. I don't care what you are, who you think you are, what you love. I don't care. As long as you know who you are and you have the ability to understand that you can choose to learn how to love yourself. I mean,
Yep.
it's the hardest recipe to learn,
It
right?
really is. It
It's
really is. And you know, I struggled with my own self-worth throughout the years, you know,
yeah.
just being insecure with growing up. You know, I went to when I went to college, you know, being poor and putting myself through school
Mhm.
and being surrounded by people that were wealthy and, you know, had both parents come in for parents weekend. And, you
Mhm.
know, it was a really challenging time. And it wasn't until the recent years in my journey that I started really leaning into my own strength and being confident in my strength because I knew that I was strong. I knew I was mentally capable, and I always had the confidence inwardly to do something because I had to do it. I had to be older than what I really was as a young kid.
Right, right,
So I
right.
always had the confidence that I could do something if I put my mind to it. But the confidence, I didn't have enough confidence to show to exude, you know. And I was dealing with insecurities, and a lot of those insecurities, they followed through with my first marriage, and they transpired through, you know, my middle adult years. And right now, the last like within the last like 3 to 5 years, I've really started getting more confident in my story and getting confident in those experiences because they're unique, and those
Mhm.
experiences are allowing me to help others find their strength.
Right.
And as I talk to men, like I started just like becoming gravitated towards this idea of like creating something or becoming someone that other men can lean on and talk with, and really try to learn that it's okay to live with love and be okay with their experiences and their traumas and work through them.
Yeah, you created a safe space, you know. You
Right.
needed, you know, that you needed a safe space getting through all of that, like being an adult at a young age, like working through confidence, you know, like when I was going to college, you know, I was at a community college, and like at the time, you know, I was really, my grandma was definitely my anchor, and she was like, I don't know
Mhm.
how to do this. Like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this, all this crap, you know? And so,
Right.
you know, and then I went to the community college, and it wasn't a good community college. Right. And so like, I struggled, like, this is so stupid. Like, I thought it was so dumb, you know, like, I had such amazing teachers in high school. I was really blessed with one of the best art teachers. She was awarded the best art teacher in the United States. And going to community college with these other art teachers, no offense to them, but they were terrible. You know, like I remember we drew something, a still life portrait of a brown paper bag. And I like to have like really thick lines and, you know, just make them look very blended. And I was told it looked like a cartoon. And I'm like, really, bitch, this is art. You know, I didn't say it, bitch, but like,
Yeah, yeah,
you know, it's just like, that is not what, you know, children need or young adults need. And so having that experience of not knowing how to go to college, not knowing, you know, how to pay for it, not being guided. And then that, it really left a sour taste in my mouth. But I've always been super creative. And, you know, Daniel teaches this to his kids all the time. Like, you do not have to go to college. There are
yeah.
so many beautiful trade schools. Like, college is such a ripoff these days, unless, you know, you're in sports and you're getting to, you know,
Right.
something, or a doctor. Like, because, you know, it's like you spend all this money for what, you know, when you can have your passion and the ability to see your passion because your parents are showing you, like, if that's your passion, go for it. Like, you know, we were just taught how to just go to college, and that end of story.
That's just part of
Um,
the programming, you know, that's
the
part of
program.
like just
Hmm.
grow up, go to college, get married, have kids, buy a
Right.
house. Like that's just that's just one way, right? There's
Yep.
many ways to have a life, and you know the how I look at it is our parents and our the people that have mentored us throughout our growing up. They're doing the best they can, right?
Absolutely.
But once you
Absolutely.
realize that, that's when you get empowered to really make the true decisions for your own self, because you realize that you don't have to follow that guidance. And why
Mhm.
am I taking financial advice from someone that doesn't invest and someone that's in debt versus let me go learn from this person over here that's a multimillionaire, and let me figure out what he's doing and not listen to my aunt over here, you know what I
Right.
mean? Or uncle or whoever tells you something,
Right.
or your parents, like, you know, like that someone telling you don't do this, don't do that, but they're crippling in debt. And it's like it's just a recipe for, you know, for disaster. And that's how history repeats itself.
Right.
And you know, you're it's not your fault for where you were born, but it's your fault for how you end up. So I read that
Oh
somewhere and
man.
it really stuck with me, you know.
100%. Yeah,
And
I know who said that too, but I think a couple people have said that, you
yeah,
know?
I don't know if I said it correctly, but
Yeah.
you
You know,
understand what
you
I'm saying.
did.
Like you're once you realize that you can control your life and design,
Hmm.
you know, you can break away from all those old stories, but those old stories are so programmed deep into our psyche
They
that
are.
it really makes it challenging for anybody to take a life shift and change their path. But like Sean stated in one of the calls, that 1% shift, you know, you make a
Mhm.
small shift and you consistently make a small shift over time, your
Yeah,
trajectory is going to be on a new course. And
absolutely.
you know, I started doing that, and that's what I started doing, you know, a handful of years ago, you know, almost 10 years ago, and getting really into personal development and just being in alignment with who I was. And like I said earlier, it wasn't until the last few years that I really started leaning into my own confidence and
Right.
being okay with my life experiences, because not
Mhm.
only do they shape
So
me,
good.
but they allow me to heal other people and to help other people find their strength.
Right. That's so beautiful, man. And I definitely agree with you. You know, once you are capable for making your own decisions, everything in your life is your fault. You know, like that's when you get to decide to be the one to
Yep.
set yourself up for a different course. And it is not easy. It's very lonely, but we get to choose to be the one. And if we are looking and listening, that right person will find us.
Right.
That's why I joined the Lion's Den. Sean was doing something radical. He was taking change and making it a priority so he can live the life that he wanted. And I was like, well, okay, then I can do that too. Like, because a lot of the times we're going to spend money on this, and this and throw away money. But when it comes to investing in ourselves, we're like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Spend
But
$1,000 on a cell phone, but you don't spend $1,000 on investing on your mindset and your emotional stability. It's like, it just, that baffles me. I've always been into personal development and investing in my mind.
right.
So I can't fathom that idea. I just don't connect with that idea of people not wanting to do that.
Right.
And it's crazy. It's
Right.
crazy.
Well, so they just don't know, it's like I've always read self-help books my whole life because I wasn't getting answers. I'd go to therapy and they would be like, oh, you seem like you're doing okay. Like, yeah, I'm doing okay, but I need guidance to do better.
Yeah.
Like, how can I be better? But I didn't realize I was naturally, educating myself because I didn't have like a ton of money, in my younger adult to have like the best therapy or the best coaches and everything like that. So it was a long, lonely road of like self-destruction pretty much.
It
Until,
is too. And like,
and
and
it really is.
the true shift doesn't come from a transactional. You can't read a book and say, okay, I know how to do this. It
Right.
has to come from a transformation. There has to be a
Yeah.
breakthrough in that
Yeah.
action, right?
Right.
So I think one of the best ways to do it is exactly how Sean laid it out, was just a 1 degree shift.
Yeah.
It's making small adjustments over time and just sticking with those things and just keep adding and keep adding,
Right.
focusing on one thing and just moving forward and then going to the next thing, moving forward. I think that's the best formula for creating massive impacts.
Absolutely. It's just like you can't, as Sean also says, is like you can't eat the whole elephant at the same time. Those 1 degree shifts are taking one bite of the elephant at a time, like Ed Milet says, like, be the one. Just
Yeah.
because you grow up poor and you come from a broken home doesn't mean that you have to follow that pattern. Just because it's ingrained in you, you can ungrain that mentality and have a different mentality of the life that you
Right.
want.
And
And
like I said earlier, it takes a different version of you to
it does.
solve a bigger problem or to live a bigger life. And if you're thinking big enough to where that idea scares you, and if you get stopped because it's too big and you can't see that you have to just chip away at it, your mindset has to shift. You're not there. You're not developed yet. And that's where the breakthrough is. Once you start shifting your mindset and knowing that you can solve that problem, then you start working backwards and you reverse engineer that
Yep.
design and you can start taking steps towards it, and
Mhm.
just chipping away at it, like we say, is the easiest way. But you have to have that mindset that, like, no,
Yeah,
hey, no, you have to be the person first before you can do it. Otherwise you're not going to get there, because it just
exactly.
takes a different version. You have to level up in all aspects. You have to
Yeah,
level up inwardly. You have to, your mental game, your physical game, your relationships, your finances, all of that stuff has to level up if you want to change the scale of something.
absolutely, man. And that's why you hire somebody to help you get in that mental
Yep.
state to teach you how to have a strong mentality, man. It's like I got people all the time saying that I'm in a cult all the time,
Yeah.
all the time. Like, especially with, some of my family members, not a lot, but some of them. And, one of them, I was like, hey, like Sean's coaching group was $47. I think he would really thrive because where I see where this person is at, it's just been the same for years and years and years. And there's so much talent, there's so much humbleness in this person. And you're just like, oh, I don't think that's for me. And I'm like, how do you know? How do you know that it's not for you unless you try? What
Yeah.
is holding you back? You know what I mean? Like, you guys, like, I think I've shared this in the previous podcast, but like, come into the Lion's Den. Like, this, Aaron has thrived through this. I've thrived through this. It's $47. And guess
Yeah.
what? Because it's $47, and if you're a man and you need more help, you can afford Aaron's coaching group too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got to put yourself around the people that you want to be like. So with that mindset, your circle has to change too. The people
It
around
does.
you have to change, because if you're going to be around someone who is staying the same and always being comfortable, guess what? You're going to slowly fall back into
Yeah.
being comfortable. We have to stay uncomfortable as much as possible for us to grow. And that is a super weird thing to think about for certain people. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yep. And like what you say with the people around you, in order to make that shift, you have to change the people around you. But the way you do that, you have to go inward, and you have to say no to going out. You have to say
Right.
no to the consistent activities that you are with these people. You have
Right.
to refocus yourself and reevaluate what you want, and then you start leading into that new path. And then the new people are going to come, they're going to circulate. There might be a couple people from your old crew that comes with you and shifts with you,
Yep.
but really, like, it's all up to you to make that shift and say no and not have that FOMO, and really just put your priorities first. No, it sucks.
It's true.
It's a it's a hard metamorphosis to go through, but
Yeah, it is. It is. It
very
really.
rewarding once you make that shift. And when you have the confidence to say no and go over here, if they
Mhm.
support you, you know that they're your friends. But if they
Absolutely.
stop calling you, the number one test is not to not call anybody, and see who calls you.
Yep.
See who follows
Yep.
up with you.
Yep.
I guarantee you, like 80% of the people that if I stop texting, they would never call me back.
Yeah.
People that
That's
I know.
crazy, huh?
You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
I knew that, and I had to make that shift too. And I had to prioritize me going out and stuff like that. One of my hobbies is I'm a house DJ. I've been DJing for like 20 years. So I throw parties and I play at nightclubs. And so being part of that underground music scene is,
Mhm.
and being in this world, are night and day,
Oh yeah.
and it's so hard to blend the two.
Yeah.
And having to cut the line off and make the priorities is very hard, because a lot of times the community and just normal people, they blend. So you have to, for me, I had to like really draw a line in the sand and say, okay, from this point forward, these people over here, no. For these events, no. I'm doing this over here, I'm doing this over there. And I really had to like take ownership of, the impacts of the nightlife schedule versus, business schedule. And
Right.
ever since I did that, and I went all in, so to speak, with my business, we've scaled it now in the last 18 months. We're on target to hit 7 figures this year. And 3 years ago, we made 10 grand the first year.
Right.
So I mean,
Right.
there's something to be said about making those shifts, and there's something to
Yeah.
be said about refocusing your energy,
Yeah.
and taking extreme accountability and extreme ownership of everything that you do, and going all in. And
Right.
it has to do with going all in with everything that is in your life.
Yeah.
And I get my sons, my two sons, my two oldest, they're part of my business. They come to my shop and they clean the shop and they get paid, and they're part of the business. I have a family business plan, and we integrate everything. And that didn't happen before. I was blending the nightlife with the business life. It was,
Right.
I had one foot in, one foot out, and
Right.
it's half-assed. You have to
Right.
make a
It is.
decision and just
It's
go
true.
all in.
Yeah, that's super true. Yeah, I was reading about that. I was like, oh man, DJ, like I love music. Music is a place where I can be like so my freest self, right? Like I always try to be as free everywhere that I can be, but music is something that is just it's like free energy. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's where you get to be, a kid again, that's what music is for me, like
Right.
having that inner child. And I'm sure that is for you too. But like at the same time, if we have, for example, one foot in the past, not just one job or a nightlife, one foot in the
Right.
past, one in the future, like everything's going to be half-assed.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you still can't enjoy those things,
Right. Right. It's
and
just
turn them
on
into
a different
something
level,
else.
having
Exactly.
boundaries and setting boundaries. And one of the things I absolutely love about house music is one, throwing events, and two, DJing, obviously. But what it does is it creates a community of
It
togetherness
does.
and being able to play music for a specific amount of time for people to connect with each other and enjoy and just let go and release for this moment.
Right.
That means a lot to me because I'm expressing myself and giving my energy to people and allowing and creating a space for people to just be with each other.
Right.
And that's one of the things that gravitates me towards house music is
Yes.
it speaks from the heart, and there's a lot of connection there.
I love that. That's also like why I love house music too. I feel like it teaches us how to be present in that moment because, music is so present. If
Mhm.
you let the music really, come through your body, like, I mean, when I was in my 20s, I was living in, Ventura, which is in between Santa Barbara and LA. And my friends didn't understand house music and I didn't care. But I would, on Sunday nights, there would be this amazing house DJ at King, this club
Yeah.
in LA. And I would drive down there by myself, which is probably really dangerous. But wasn't drinking. I didn't do drugs. Like the music was my drug where I just can be in this safe space because around people that are in the house music community generally like are filled with love because they know what that music brings to them. That music
Right.
brings them out of depression. It brings them out of all these things. And yeah, some people are on drugs and that's why people are so nice sometimes. You know what I mean? But like, you know, but at the
Those help
same
too,
time,
but no, I get what you're saying.
yeah, but at the same time, you will find that there's a lot of people just completely sober, just enjoying the community because there is so much
Yeah.
love.
Yep.
And house music has been such a part of my life since I was like in middle school, even though I didn't understand what that music was. I was just always drawn to it. Like it's the only type of music where my brain just shuts off like completely. And all I'm thinking about is those beats and where that music comes from. And, like I got to bring Daniel to see Dead Mouse last year for my birthday. And he was like, before I had already had these plans, right? And I was like, well, just still come out for my birthday. I'll buy you a ticket because his birthday was a couple weeks beforehand. And, you can go do something while we're at the concert. And I'm like, that's bullshit. I don't care if he's never like listened to that music. I want him to experience this experience. And he wrote this long post. I wish I could find it because, he used to have PTSD and him being around all these people, he was like, there was all types of different people. There was
Yeah.
old people, there was couples, there was kids, there was all these diversities of human beings all in the same realm moving with the beat
Right.
together. He was like, I couldn't believe that experience and how much I enjoyed that energy and that vibration that was literally linked between all these human beings. It's such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I love that. I was like excited to talk to you about that when I saw that in your bio and I was like, yes, he's on all. Sorry if you hear a lawnmower outside.
I can't hear anything.
Well, this little microphone like takes that stuff out. But in conclusion to us talking about house music, I'm sure we can talk about this forever. If you're growing and expanding, and that you can find something that brings you peace and joy to help you get through the lonely road of becoming somebody else. Maybe it is house music, you guys. Like maybe it's breath work, maybe it's something, but find that thing that makes you feel like you can bring your inner child out and be okay with that inner child. I just love that.
Thank you.
20 years. That's really cool.
At least 20 years, probably 22, 23.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And it's such a cool thing that you get to share that experience because that's something that you get to throw in that most people don't.
Yeah. And I still share with my kids. I mean, I've got, a couple thousand records and my turntables and CDJs are in our living room under our TV.
That's
It's
awesome.
a focal point. Music is definitely a focal point of our family.
Yeah.
and kids mess with it. And we get non-house music records too. And we,
For
we play
sure.
the records during dinner and,
Yeah.
prepping dinner and hanging out and just
Yes.
lounging days. But
Yeah.
I definitely like to show the kids that music is very important to life.
It really is. And I also feel like having that background noise, because music is such love, or it comes from a dark place, but it's also telling a story, right? Like I feel like it helps people communicate because there's another vibration going on.
Right.
I feel weird when there's like not music on if I have people over, or like just groups of people hanging out. Like it brings that silence, and it just takes it out. And I feel
Right.
like music can really bring people together in a comfortable way and expressing themselves.
Yeah. Breaks down the barriers for
It
sure.
really does. It really
Yeah.
does. I love this whole conversation, Aaron. I think this is amazing. I think what you're
Likewise.
doing
Thank
is
you.
incredible. I'm so happy that I get to share your story with the world, and hopefully people can connect with you because of this. And
I hope so.
I hope so too. My audience is, it's kind of little, but that's okay. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I
You got to
haven't
start somewhere
stopped.
and you're growing.
Yeah.
You're a few steps ahead of me too. I have an idea to start a podcast, and I'm gonna actually add on a men's group, and my idea is called the Heart of Man Experience, where
Ooh.
I create a men's group that does just this, and goes through a lot of vulnerability stuff and trauma response, and just taking extreme ownership and accountability for who you are as a man, as a family man, as a business owner, and part of a community. You have a duty to lead and serve, and I want to create an environment, a platform for not only people to hear me and the group, but people to open up and to feel safe and share where they're coming from, their stories, and in hopes that they can find strength for themselves to be their best.
Absolutely. That's exactly what my podcast is about too. And
Awesome.
that's, when I started this podcast, and this is for you guys too. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of podcasts out there, but guess what? You have your own community where people get to feel safe, or people get to feel heard, or they have somewhere to come to listen to because they know
Yeah.
you,
Yep.
and that is a beautiful thing. And it's taking your experiences to the next level and to the next level. And, I definitely do it. You should do it for sure.
Awesome. No,
Yeah.
I'm going to.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. So I always end the call with a couple of, major gold tips for the audience, just to kind of go back through this whole conversation. And usually it's the same thing that I ask. And what are the top, 3 to 5 things that come to mind that you can share with the audience to help them level up, learn to love themselves, and know how to give it back?
I would just say, like, just to know your true strength, and it doesn't matter what happens after that, it'll be the right thing. um living for yourself, and in what and let your heart speak,
Mm.
and just try to be vulnerable as you can in all aspects of life. And the more vulnerable you are and the more integrity you have as a human, life will unfold beautifully before you.
Oh, that is so good. That is so good. Write that down, you guys. Put it on your mirror somewhere. Well, thank you, Aaron, so much for spending your Monday with me. And
I
just
appreciate it. Thank you.
thanks for being vulnerable on here. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it. And I'm really excited to hear your podcast in the future, especially with your wife's parents. I
Yes.
think that would
I'll
be
keep that in
so
mind. That's a good
amazing.
idea. So
It's
that's a
so good. It's so good.
yeah.
So, and I'm excited to meet you at Lions Den Live and have more experiences with our tribe. So you guys
Awesome.
get a tribe, get a community, find who that person is. If you don't know what your community is, reach out to Aaron, reach out to myself. I can guide you to somebody or someone. So that's the same thing. Who cares? But thanks you guys for listening to us, and have an amazing week and go all in. All right. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.